we are united by a common goal. The reason we are all here together as a team, as a pool of people, is because we have a mutual interest, and that is young people and also partnerships. LEAP stands for Leadership, Effectiveness, Accountability, and Professionalism. It's an acronym that we need to always spell out because there are many LEAP Africa, when you put it in the Google search, that doesn't really tell who we are if we do not help you understand our history, our heritage, and why we've come to be. Our organization was established in 2002. Just to create a context, I'm not the founder of the organization. I am the executive director, but I've worked in the organization for 14 years. The reason our organization was birthed was with the conviction that young people can participate in national discourse. Keep Africa is a youth-focused organization that is invested in youth leadership development. And our work, in essence, is to raise ethical, values-based leaders who will drive Africa's full potential. We are invested in raising ethical leaders that will drive sectors and several industries and contribute at national discourse as well, that not only serves them, their families, their businesses, and their communities, but the country and the continent at large. There are millions of young people, I beg your pardon, in Africa, and there are so much resources that has been put into that. Several things that has allowed us to work together as a group with young people. But in our unit, in our organization, we have invested in providing the skills and tools that will lead to their own personal transformation, community transformation, and national transformation. We have 5 transition lenses with which guides our work in the more recent years. And this is in the area of education, employability, entrepreneurship, active citizenship, social mobility, and healthy lifestyle, healthy behaviors. When we think about education, we work in schools and out of schools with young people, in secondary schools particularly, and in tertiary education, to allow them become meaningful, awesome individuals. And when we speak to employability and entrepreneurship, this is us working with social innovators. This is us working with young professionals. This is us working with young people, undergraduates, to be employable. We have a huge unemployment gap in Nigeria, in Africa at large. And when it comes to healthy behaviors or healthy lifestyles, very big for us is the fact that we need to create safe spaces for young people to thrive, for young people to fulfill their potentials, for young people to learn, for young people to lead, for young people to speak up, to speak out, to speak their truth, and put their innovative mind to work. And that can only be done when they have the right space, the right ambience, when they have the right environment to do that. For every young people who come across our programming, they can become activated in local participation. We think about it, most times when we say what's the problem with Africa, we think about it at the national level. But we have a bottom-up approach as well as a top-to-bottom approach. Primarily, our focus is to work with young people or families from low-income communities, the underserved, the marginalized, those who are excluded, those who resources cannot reach, those in the grassroots area. And so by investing in education, employability, entrepreneurship, and activating young people to work and participate in community engagements, we transform their ability to move from one social class to another. We also believe in the power of the ecosystem. There are several resources coming into Africa, but very soon this can change. 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And we need to invest in an ecosystem that supports itself. So those are our overarching pillars that transcend into how we do our work within 2 programmatic thrusts. Our making secondary education work is a big pillar for us, and raising talent for the actualization of the SDGs. These 2 programmatic pillars really structure our work and initiatives. We are catalyzing the agency of young people by working with youth-relevant organizations, youth-focused organizations, and youth-led organizations. That is our mission, that is our focus, and that's why we are here. We are hoping that we can get you to get on board with us, work with us, and support the movement within Africa at large.
I look after public affairs and some government affairs work for DAO in Africa, so it's the top to bottom of Africa. 3 things I'm passionate about: Africa, young people, local production. If you do that, we'll have meaningful jobs, and just no jobs, good quality jobs, because that manufacturing sector is the one that gives you good jobs. Our company is 125 years old. Globally, in Africa, we are 60 years old. And in Kenya or East Africa, what we call East Africa, we are just close to 15 years. And we are a material science company, so we do chemistry. It's the chemistry company. So we touch you every day. Hence, our company is keen on adding value to sustainable journey. We want to use our science and innovation to create a sustainable future and make sure that we are protecting the planet. We have done a lot of work, especially in enabling the circularity of plastics materials. So you see a lot of our work, especially with Child Fund, trying to really build capacity in plastics material. What can you do with those materials that you're calling waste? Can we build them and make them better and build other capabilities with that waste? The other way is building inclusive communities. We want everybody to be part of the journey. Women, the young people, those who are differently abled. The community must be inclusive for us to be able to progress and create sustainable economies. SDGs really touch on the things that even Africa suffer from, all of them. The 16 of them, we suffer from all of them. Hunger, poverty, low education, joblessness, we suffer from all of them. But what you'll notice is that all those SDGs are interconnected. They are together. You cannot associate one from the other one, disassociate. For example, how do you talk about education to a hungry person? Meaning that you cannot enable another one and really reject the other one. So we are interconnected. If Leap Africa is focusing on enabling young people to activate the economics, then Child Fund is enabling them to access water, education, and sanitation capabilities, and even enabling the TVETs to really be able to produce good quality students. And perhaps Young Africa Leaders Initiative is trying to produce leaders out of the program. So we can't really run separately. We have got to come together. Hence, we are enabling you to come together. We are forming you to sign agreements together so that you can carry each other and we can carry the whole of Africa forward. So today's project really, and the partnership with Leap Africa is very special for us. It brings together a group of people who are able to mobilize Africa into volunteerism. And through the projects that are already being done, unique projects that are being done by the young people, the social entrepreneurs that you've already created, we want to take those projects out. We want to activate them. We want them to be seen. And we want to invest in them so that we can drive more impact into the communities. This is the second year going, and we are really loving it. And I think we'll stick together. And this is our commitment, that we'll stick together until we can make something work with Leap Africa. Of course, as young people, you're already on the table. Not that you're not on the table, you are already on the table. Who saw the video of that girl in Wasingishu talking to the leadership? The people in Kenya must have seen it. Did you see that girl, 24 years old, telling leaders you need to be accountable and you need to do it? And she was brave. A 24-year-old. What do you think? Multiply that by the millions of young people in Africa. You have already been given a platform. Those fathers and mothers were seated while they listened to this girl talk to the leaders. When did that happen before? Meaning that you're already at the table. And for us, we're allowing you to join us at the table. We're allowing you to come to the table. We're enabling you to come to the table. And using a project like this one, you have been invited freely to come and just engage, showcase what you're doing. Let us see it, and we will speak for you. And I think seeing Rashid there, Rashid, nice to see you. He has a football program somewhere, and Rashid is doing a great job by mobilizing young people from the community to go just have some purpose through soccer. Girls and boys. And because of that, they stay in school. Because of that, they are healthy. And because of that, they can finish their school. Let us all purpose to do something. As DAO, we are doing something about it. We bring resources to enable you to do something. But for us, we are committed to working with you till the end, where we see that our young people are really enabled, where our young people understand the future of the continent is in their hands. And they know that, but they need to hear it many times over, that it is them who are going to be able to enable us to move forward.
Hamjambo. Good morning once again. My name is Chege Ngugi. I'm the Africa Region Director for Child Fund. I oversee support to 9 countries in Africa. Child Fund has presence in 20 countries globally, 9 of those in Africa. What does that tell you? Africa is the biggest part of our work globally. And in terms of reach, last FY, we call it our fiscal year, we were able to reach about 21 million children globally, and 11 million of those are from Africa. We have only been able to do this because of the support we got from partners like DAO and others, and also the network of partners we work with, like Leap Africa. So I'm excited to see the gathering today. And as Mombi says, we see a lot of young people here. And that is what we need in Africa. Africa is the youngest population. And we can only move ahead if we tap on the energy that youth are bringing. We'll be denying ourselves growth if we don't give the mantle to the youth of Africa. And youth of Africa, I think it's time to demand for it. Don't sit and wait for it. It's time to rise up and say, yes, we are capable, we can do it. So I'm excited today that in Kenya, that I'm being invited to speak in Kenya by somebody from Nigeria, not from. They say charity starts at home. But what they are saying, that is in line with the motto, social mobilization. We are one, Africa is one. And that's the only way we can build Africa. And youth have the capacity, have what it takes to build Africa. So don't request to be given the mantle, go for it, go for it and take it up. We say, be the change you want to be or you want to see. Nobody else will give it to you. So move on, and we are happy that this is starting here. And what we are saying in Africa, if we are to embrace the continental free trade area, one of the areas that we want to see is opening our borders for our youth to move across, look for jobs, spread their technology advancement, and practice that in any African countries without feeling that you are a foreigner. Let's avoid the xenophobia we see in Africa. That's the only way we can do that. The last thing, we as Child Fund, we start supporting or building the capacity of children from 0, going up to 24. We work with them up to 24. And we only do that, we can only have youth if we are nurturing our children. If we are not nurturing our children, we will not have responsible youth that we are looking forward to be the leaders of today, not of tomorrow.
How can partnerships be adaptable to each community's unique needs, informing this partnership that is, and bringing us closer to the SDG goals?
When you think about the complexity of the issues in Africa, and then you think about the 17 SDGs, let's say 16 for this matter, because the 17th is partnerships, they are very similar. All those challenges, you can put them parallel to the SDGs, so they are very similar. But you think about the diversity in Africa. When it comes to the diversity of problems, that's where we connect. There's no diversity there. The issues are the same. The issues in Kenya, when you talk about hunger and you talk about education, it's the same in any other country in Africa. So we don't have diversity of problems, we have similarity of problems. They are all the same. And hence, the partnerships we create cannot be domiciled in Kenya. Say there's a partnership in Kenya that works and another one in Zambia that works and a very different one in South Africa. Where can we find convergences across Africa? And that's why this is very meaningful, that we are bringing Leap Africa all the way from Nigeria to bring them to Kenya to integrate with others to make this work. So partnerships across Africa must be integrated because our problems are integrated. Hence, even the policies that we create and the way we achieve our conversations with government, we must find a way that we can converge our conversations within governments, government to government.
How do you see the role of civil society organizations in fostering collaborations between the public, social, and private sectors to support youth-led action on the SDGs?
There has been a lot of differences between civil society organizations, private sector, and government. From the government, civil society organizations are seen like pushing for an agenda. From the private sector, they don't have confidence in what CSO are doing. They didn't have. They thought the CSO are so bureaucratic, they don't move as fast. Then from the CSO, they see private sector as profit motivated. They don't see the need, the social good in the private sector. Then from the government, they see from a regulator's eyes, these people are pushing us to account, to be accountable and all that. But that has changed over time. And we are seeing now the coming together of these three forces, important forces, private sector, the government, and CSOs, because of the need to come together. I think with that, there's a lot of work that CSOs or civil society organizations can do. They relate better with the most marginalized communities that we deal with. So they are, some of them you find in some places, you don't get private sector, you don't get government, but you are seeing civil society organizations, what they say the hardest to reach areas. So I think that's one role, that civil society organizations are the best connectors. They can play a very critical role in connecting youth and others to address their challenges. The other thing that I see the role of civil society organization is a capacity builder. They are able, again, they understand better the role of the youth, the challenges that the youth encounter. So in terms of addressing that, I think the civil society organization is best placed to address the capacity gaps that our youth have. Provide space or a forum where youth are able to articulate their issues.
There are many challenges when it comes to the youth development space in Africa, and I think all of us here will probably have experienced several in the course of our work in the space. At Leap Africa, a major one for us has been being a Pan-African organization and domiciled in Nigeria. Chega made mention of this earlier when he was speaking, which was the cross-border partnerships are not always as easy. And you know that there's some young, like Africa is indeed one, like he said. I very much align with that thought. And we do have national borders, but sometimes these borders can be quite divisive because when you're crossing into another region, you're constrained by the laws of the land, which might differ from yours, and you're trying to reach young people in some place else that you're not domiciled. It's not always easy. And so there's been a huge constraint with being able to be a Pan-African organization to the extent that we really want to be where we are domiciled in West Africa. There's also a resource constraint where there's so much funding that's needed to really be aspirational. And there's no way around it. There's resources that's needed. There's human resources, there's financial implications, there's even infrastructural resources that are needed where we're working. And in our continent, a lot of these things are not as easy to access, or if they're accessible, they are very expensive. So it calls into question judicious spending. And of course, when you're not for profit, then you're not thinking about making a profit on things you're doing. So you have to think through, how am I best using this funding that I have? How can I be most cost effective? So there's been some of those types of constraints at the organization. And I think another constraint, I think this could be a lot of our people that you do want to hire, you find that you have to upskill them even when they're coming out of university. Shockingly, we find that young people in Nigeria, I'll use Nigeria as an example, they are not very employable when they're coming out of the university system. It's quite frightening and it's quite worrying because these are the same young people that we exist to serve and to help and to support. And we see that massive gap in how do you even get them to the place where they can even contribute effectively. And so as an organization that's trying to do work across the continent and within Nigeria, you find the young people are not even as skilled as you need them to be right off the bat. So you have to put extra effort into upskilling them, equipping them, empowering them.
Making collaboration complex and challenging. But why must these actors partner to promote youth-led actions towards the SDGs?
I think we go back to how we need to coexist to get it done. I just want to be very clear, even for our guests today. Private sector, NGOs, this is just not a normal thing you wake up and get to go and sit and get things done. We are different type of mindsets here. We are for profit. Our results are issued every quarter. I don't think we can issue results in the community every quarter. Okay, I want to see the impact of how much we've gained in terms of education and impact to our community. So our mindsets are very different when it comes to doing things. So we have to come to the table and then decide what then is the problem. So the problem we are trying to address is the same. Even for private, it's the same. So let's assume we are talking about circularity or in the community, circular economy. We talk about climate action. That's the problem. How I address it as private sector, how you address it as development agencies, how we address it as government, then becomes very unique. So how then can we bring all those mindsets in a way that there's a convergence of all those mindsets? Then we have to realize that all of us have a role. Government has a role. They become the policymakers. We need to galvanize them to make sure that the policies are supporting the enabling of those SDGs to emerge and to be activated and to really be achieved.
How do you know what I need when you haven't consulted me? How do you know my pain points when I haven't told you and you're making that assumption on my behalf? Whether it is someone dealing with disabilities or whether it is somebody in a remote indigenous community that is not usually accessible, how do you know their needs if you're not asking those questions? If you're not even going to them, you have to go to them sometimes. And again, there's a lot of work and intentionality behind it, but it's important that when you're making plans, when you're co-creating or when you're thinking through interventions, programs, projects, you're thinking about the last man, no one left behind. And that's even one of the premises underpinning SDGs. Leave no one behind. If you're really interested in leaving no one behind, you'll do what it takes to get to where they are, if that's what it takes. And
how can we support and resource youth-led action across Africa effectively?
I think the issue of youth, we can see the discussion here, that youth is a multi-sectoral issue. It's not for any given sector. It cuts across. So if we are talking of resources, then we are talking of resources coming from all the sectors that we find ourselves in. So I think that's an issue. And again, the mistaken idea or thought that resources mean money. I think that's a mistaken way of looking at it. And if we follow that, then we'll be losing, we'll be missing a lot. So for me, resources are more than money. So we should be able to see, to create systems. One, yes, we need the resources, but we are able to mobilize resources and ensure that these resources are redistributed equitably. Let's open up Africa. I think let's not create those artificial boundaries that stop our youth from going, moving around, learning, and also practicing what they do. I think Africa has a lot of resources. I think all we need in Africa, not resources per se from outside, is that partnership where others are supporting each other, learning from each other.
How can Pan-African partnerships leverage innovative financial models, such as impact investment or blended financing, to attract private capital and direct it towards youth-led projects with a high potential for social change or social and investment returns?
You have to have a very strong business case. The others have social obligations. They want to see social impact. What will your project or proposed intervention, what impact will it have socially? Well, and of course, some of them expect their return. They not expect profit, but they want to get their money back. So for me, one of the ways we can do that is how do we help our youth? How do we work with our youth? How do we work with our youth to provide or to create those convincing business cases? I think that is the most important thing that we can do.
I'll use Kenya as a case. There are so many startups, and you see good funding to startups. What do they have in common? They resolve a social problem. They start with a problem. You know you have a problem. I cannot go to the market on time. I have someone who brings me convenience, they give me. I'm wasting food in the marketplace. How do I get my food stored? Food banks. You know, it's solving a very simple social problem. When you have an idea, how do you then create a solution? And once you create a solution, it goes to my second point. How do you defend it? Our young people do not know how to stand and defend their project. They can say, my solution will do this, and this is the reason, this is the problem, this is what I want to do, and this will be the outcome. They can't do that effectively. So if you look at the startups that have been funded, it's because they have a good story. Yes, everybody can exactly do what they're doing, but they have been able to go and defend it in front of money. Money will not come to you if you do not ask for it. So you need to have a way to defend it. So when you talk about even STEM, and you call it STEAM, that A, when you talk about the arts, it's just not creativity. It's about even articulation of your issues. It's how you speak up, how you present your cases.
So I really do think that when we're thinking about impact investment, we're thinking about investing in businesses as well as investing in organizations that are having an impact at the grassroots, having an impact on young people, having an impact in terms of getting to those who are vulnerable and marginalized. And I just want us to have that balanced perspective as well.
How much money is really needed to close the SDG gap in Africa?
I know it's in the hundreds of millions, billions perhaps even of dollars to close the gaps so that we can get to the SDGs.
Africa is behind, unfortunately, in most of those parameters or indicators, but also that not even the war in Ukraine, the conflict in Africa is destabilizing and diverting our focus on addressing those objectives and indicators. I think the other big thing is climate change. Though it's part of that, but the impact of climate change has gone a notch higher than anybody expected. And that is also contributing to the underperformance across Africa.
Clearly, we need a lot of money. How much we do not know. So all of us have no idea. But I think we shouldn't lose heart. You know, we are not where we were in 2015 for sure, when the SDGs were being, articulated. So we have made some good steps. We can talk about inclusion, equalities. We can talk about education. Of course, we have moved a bit far behind post-COVID, but we have made some good progress. Where we are, we just need to play our role. So long as all of us are doing something about it, be confident that you're doing something good, and it is okay to be behind. Sometimes it's good to also take a step back, because maybe you can reconfigure yourselves. The things we learned during COVID as Africa has taught us so much. We even had to produce masks, for example, locally. We could not do that. We learned something that we didn't know the year before, meaning that we've learned so much. If you're playing your role, like I know our company is doing what it can, even eventually you're going out to volunteer and you're playing your role, you're doing the right thing. So long as you're doing that, don't worry. Everything else will come together, but we must activate the voice, elevate our voices towards those SDGs, and make sure we are moving towards one direction.
My name is Edward Kipkalia from the Emerging Leaders Foundation Africa. How do we balance between the short-term youth-led sustainability actions towards interventions around SDGs towards the long-term sustainability of such initiatives? Because looking at starting initiatives and different interventions, it's very easy, but sustaining them is a problem. So how do we negate between those two things so that we can move from not only having SDGs as sustainable development goals, but looking at SDGs as shared dreams gone successful?
My name is Thomas Krop, and I'm from West Pokot County, and I run an organization called Kenya Youth in Climate Action.
My name is George Wamai. I come from a CSO, supporting most of the youth, and especially within the northern Kenya. How do we make these partnerships from being transactional into a more transformational partnerships that are going to create more impact for the youth? And mind you, they're not operating in isolation. There is the youth, but also there is also the rest of the population. So how do we move that in that?
My name is Arnolda. I work for an organization called Diageo. So Mumbi, I loved what you said about partnerships. I'd love to have a conversation with you about plastics, especially in West Africa, because two of our businesses, we know that we're trying to reduce the amount of plastic that we use internally, but then we're also trying to work with communities to collect the plastic that's out there, especially in Ghana. We are members of an organization called GRIPE, which is GRIPE. As a business, we've supported through the organization 10 plastic buyback centers, and we work with communities to collect the plastic, and then it's sorted, and it's, there's a whole movement. So I'm seeing an opportunity for young people because we work with women currently. I would love to have a conversation with you to see what we can do in West Africa to get more young people involved into the plastics recycling circularity conversation.
Recycling. When you think about recycling, it looks like an ungodly place to go to, but it's the one that is getting the biggest amount of funding today. So if you can start understanding the value that you get from waste, and plastics waste is getting the biggest amount of innovation money, collection, we are calling it stopping the waste. When you stop the waste, it's making sure that we are collecting and aggregating what is recyclable, and we are closing the loop by making sure that we are recycling that. That sector is growing. Kenya is advanced. West Africa is growing. We have organizations that you can already...
Everyone, Nangila Wafula is my name. I'm from Green Generation Initiative. My question is to Madam Mumbi. You said most young people, when they leave university, they are unemployable. I tend to agree to that because I was one of them until I joined a program called LX. 3 months into the program, they have been teaching us soft skills, how to interact with employers, how to persevere, how to gain grit, and how to push past our own comfort zones and limits. And I'm thinking like, if these skills were taught to us in campus, it will lessen the time that we need to learn those skills after school, and it will give us more chance to be employable. And the median age of Africa is 19 years old. So Africa, we have the biggest resource. By 2050, most of the world's population labor will be coming from Africa. So how can we work into making sure that these young people, as they leave campus, they are already equipped with those skills, such that the skills are in the system already? They could be like extra courses that people can take so that they are equipped for the courses past campus, so that we save that time that they have to go back to school again to access the same skills and start moving into action. Because we were given 1 month to come up with tech solutions, and I can assure you, in 1 month, people were able to come up with these big ideas, and it was because they had the platform and the resources. So I was thinking, how can we work to make sure this reaches all the youth, even in rural areas?
Hi, good morning. My name is Muliro. I work for Schofield Associates, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Nairobi. I want to throw back the question. Chege alluded to this, that research is not being funded. In fact, there's a lot of funding on evaluation side, but not on the assessment side, so that the youth can actually share what they have to, what they want, so that that can advise programs. So the question back to everyone in the panel, but starting with Chege, is how can we ensure that conversations with with donors rather, move towards funding or supporting research work that can actually enable decision making, what the lady is actually talking about. And then secondly, we talk about participatory research in social science, but most of the times that level of participation is often ignored at the local level. And even the development partners who are actually doing most of that work don't go down to the grassroots. So the other question is, how do you ensure that that level of participatory research can actually advise programs beyond certain activities and ensure the partnerships, what you called cross-border partnerships to ensure that we achieve the SDGs.
In this platform, now that we are all talking about young people, youth, their efforts and their challenges, how can we help them? What are some of the programs that we can, effective programs that we can initiate that are going to really help young people to direct their energies to the right direction? Can we have effective civic engagement and leadership training programs that are very inclusive, actionable, and that are going to help young people? Then the last question goes to, I think it's Dr. Chege from Child Fund. And I believe if you want to work with children, mostly you will find them in schools because those are already organized institutions and platforms. We also work with schools in terms of greening the environment and raising socially responsible citizens of the country. So may I just know some of the programs maybe you run with young people, to be specific, children in schools?
I agree with you, and this is one of the areas that we have got to get right. What you see a lot, and we have to get out of that, and I'm glad that we don't do that, is the typical CSR, what you call corporate social responsibility, where you just hand over items, you feel good, you take a photo, you walk away. And we can no longer do that, and we don't do that. And I'll give you an example of a project we have here in Kenya. It's a TVET in Kikuyu. I told you about local production. In that school, they were being taught how to build a house. How you taught how to build a house? Take a stone, put it on top of another stone, put a mortar, put another one, like that. They were being told the skill of putting up a wall. And they were taught the skill of putting up a tile. Take a tile, put the adhesive and place it, and make sure that it's looking nice and neat. So I asked the school, why don't you teach them how to make the tile instead? Perhaps if they made the tile or the caravat or a paving block, perhaps they will produce it and sell it into the industry where we have a lot of construction. And with Child Fund, we were able to create a workshop that then is now trying to help the kids see how to make blocks. And we're making interlocking blocks now. And they can create an income out of it. They get additional skills. Now, that is an example of a long-term partnerships where we are just not just training for the sake of just learn how to do things, but learn how to make things. So if we can have more players understanding really how to create more value by creating long-term partnerships like this and build more impact, then we are doing something good. But I know there's a gap about long-term partnerships. And I know the NGO partners will touch a bit about that because they're the ones who develop those projects. But I think I'll touch the small NGO question about funding small NGOs, because I know that also is a big area. It's about partnerships. How do we choose to create a partnership with Child Fund and Leap Africa and maybe not a community-based organization that is implementing? You have to agree that our governance are very difficult sometimes. They're very hierarchical. They have very many layers of approvals that really require that all our partners are designed in a certain way. And I know we'll require a bit of more capacity building for smaller NGOs, but if we can work together just to walk a journey to see what kind of governance structures that are required to be able to get bigger funding, then that can be acquired through this process. But I think continue learning, continue investing in what you're doing, and over time, we will be able to fund your NGOs in due time.
I think SDGs helped NGOs and other key players be focused. And as a parameter to measure yourself, how are you doing? But most NGOs start with Child Fund. We look at long-term development, long-term sustainability, and long-term impact. That's the only way, in a simple way, that's how I can answer it. That we are not looking at short-term, we're not looking at tomorrow. And Mumbi was very clear. When you work with the community, you don't ask what is the impact after 3 months. It's not realistic. It's not possible. You look at it in terms of years. And we also undertake longitudinal studies that can tell you how much have you achieved and what any gaps that need to be addressed. So in a short form that way.
And one thing that we at Leap Africa, we definitely do is we mainstream and we keep our focus on public universities where we're doing our university-based program. So we have like a youth leadership program that we do. It's targeted at public universities. I mean, we open it to the tertiary ecosystem really, but we do have a strong focus on public universities because we do see that gap. And we want to start to see how we can even partner with them to create centers of excellence, like you asked and you mentioned earlier, which we call innovation hubs, where we can start to mainstream and support the curriculum development and the upskilling of the students while they're in school, so that by the time they're graduating and coming out of the school university system, they have skills that they can leverage on and be useful in the workplace. Because what you find is a lot of employers are having to spend a lot of money on learning and development for their new recruits, especially those coming right out of university. So a way for us to think about it efficiently is how do we get to the university students before they're in the world of work? Talking about the transactional, that was a very interesting comment, and it's true, but not always true, but it's true for most part. And a lot of nonprofits, and I would like to say, I'll speak boldly about Leap Africa. We're very, very particular about the kind of partnerships that we come into. We can't be partners with everyone, and we know this. And like she said earlier, the partnerships that we've turned away from because we found it to be transactional, not as impact-driven, not really aligning with our values. So one of the ways that we make it transformational is that we make sure that it is values-based and it is impact-driven. So it's not about how to get a photo up for a partner so that they look like they're, like Mumbi said, you do CSR, you're taking it off the box. I gave 6 boxes of clothes to people in the community, or even ESG to a certain extent, starting to have that flow of, you do it to show that, I'm paying a little bit of attention. We know, and it's not difficult to kind of know partners that are truly driven by impact and those who just really want to tick a box, you can tell. When you're having conversations, when you're meeting with them, it's not hard to weed them out, really. And this is what we try to do very, very intentionally to make sure that what is the impact that we're trying to achieve and what is the commitment and what is the values that is underpinning all this that we're doing. And that's how we try to keep it transformational. And it's a great question to bring up because we really need to move from that transactional framework. We must, right? Otherwise, we're just jokers if we're thinking that we're going to be making a change or reaching our SDG goals. We're not going to be able to do that.
I can tell you in our DNA, our business model is working through local partners. Globally, we have about 170 local partners. Here in Kenya, we have 11 local implementing partners. And we have presence in 27 of the 47 counties. And Kisumu is one of the counties. To add on that, I think we have signed, or we are finalizing signing an MOU with the Lake Region Economic Bloc. So we are not leaving any area behind, and we are open to discussing with local organizations, how can we work together? As we said, partnership is the way to go. I think the other issue to do with research, yes, it's true, funding has declined and most of research has been left behind, but there's a way of looking at that. How do we, as NGOs or civil society organizations, how do we inbuild in our budgets, in our proposals, action research in our program? That's an easier way of funding that. But also we need to be more intentional in educating donors on the importance, because these are the same donors that are pushing for evidence-based, are pushing for data-driven interventions. So I think we need to be intentional in educating donors the importance of funding some level percentage of money going to research.
We have a MEL department and it's very invested in putting out research materials. We are constantly finding new ways to improve our curriculum and to serve young people. And so investment in research is really important. So yes, we allocate some money in the budget for that to happen. And we also have an institute that is going to create a lot of resources across Africa as a data bank or data source for us to also co-create and find new solutions coming out from Africa. I think that point on the MOUs with the government is very key when we talk about transitioning from transactional to transformational relationships. When the relationships are sustained, then you will see more transformational projects or see it transform into transformational projects because they were intended as at the start of the project to be so.